everybody's special. We might not all be, pop singers. We might not all be NBA players. We might not all be celebrities. We might not all be billionaires, but we're all special. What would people's mask look like if they grew up hearing the message, "You're special, let's develop that"?
My name is Ashanti, and welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast, where men come and get real. Men of all ages, backgrounds, cultures come together to talk about what we show and what we don't show. In these conversations, we talk about the front of the mask being what we gladly let the world see about us. And the back of the mask are the things that we don't usually talk much about. Maybe you ask yourself, what things are you gladly showing on your mask? What are the things that you're letting people see about you? And what are the things that you're kind of keeping to yourself? Today, sharing his mask is Gerry Sandusky. He's the voice of the NFL's Baltimore Ravens. I'm not really a voice guy, but Gerry has an amazing voice, by the way. He's a broadcaster. He's a communications coach. I got connected to Gerry when I was invited to present at the NatCon conference 2023. That was in the LA Convention Center, the National Council for Mental Health. And I was invited to do a TED Talk, a TED style talk at this conference. And Gerry was my coach. And man, I've never really had a speaking coach. There was one time I had someone help me with a speech, but this was beautiful. And his process was really inspiring to me as a person who speaks a lot, several dozen, 100 times a year, maybe. I am so excited to be on this conversation with him. During the NatCon conference, we not only had a chance to deliver this meaningful talk about the emotional locksmith, but he shared his story. I got to learn about his story and his growing up with his father and the story of his father and the book that he wrote. And I was inspired on so many levels of this conversation, not only when I got to meet Gerry face to face and in Los Angeles, but also in this conversation where we go a little deeper. I really hope that as you listen to these conversations, you are also inspired that people from all backgrounds, no matter where they're from, have more to each of us than people can see by just looking at us. So today's conversation with Gerry, I hope you not only enjoy the words that we say, I hope you enjoy the inspiration that hopefully more young men and more men around the world get when they think about the masks they wear. Gerry is a broadcaster in the NFL. He meets players all the time who have these roles they play. They have the professional athlete, and they have the human person who is navigating life in so many ways. And some of them navigate it better than others. And you've seen it. You've seen it play out in real time on whatever your favorite sports show is, or your favorite channel is, or even just the evening news. You've seen what happens when players sometimes don't deal with the things that are going on with their lives. And so even though we don't talk about sports in this conversation too much, even though we don't talk about the players who play for the Ravens, but we do talk about what it's like to have two men come together and have real conversations. I think our world misses that. I think we need that. And hopefully these conversations will inspire more people to do that. If you haven't made a mask yet, we invite you to make a mask at millionmask.org. And if you are not yet following this podcast, or if you have not subscribed, please subscribe now. Tell someone about it. We think there's a lot of new changes that are going to be happening over this next season that hopefully will inspire you to be not only a listener, but a part of this Million Mask movement. Stay tuned for some news coming soon that is going to help our work in this Ever Forward Club and hopefully help the work that you do in your daily lives to build connection with the people you care about. Thank you for being a part of the Taking Off the Mask podcast. We'll see you soon, folks. Thanks. Bye now. Gerry Sandusky, welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast. It is so great to have you.
Ashanti, awesome to be with you. I've been looking forward to this and just honored to be on the episode.
How about this? How about you tell folks what you want them to know about you before we jump in? But what would you like folks to know about you before we jump into these masks?
So I'm the play-by-play voice of the Baltimore Ravens, broadcaster for the NBC affiliate in Baltimore. I do the 6 and 11 o'clock sports. And then my other passion is I'm the president of my own communications coaching consulting company called Sandusky Group, where I teach leaders and emerging leaders how to bring their excellence to the front of the room, the Zoom, and the camera, the three areas that intimidate most people and kind of hold most people back. So I just show them how to move past those barriers and really shine in those spotlights.
You definitely helped me as I was preparing for my NatCon conference. And so glad we got to meet there. And so thank you for being a part of this with us today.
My pleasure.
Well, we're going to make our mask together. The mask is this movement that we created around emotions and around our beings and who we are. And I think that people, for me, who wants to be in front of the camera more, but also is a little shy and nervous and has a lot of noise in my head about it. Sometimes it's all this a plan behind the scenes that gets in the way of us kind of maybe even being our full self sometimes.
You absolutely nailed it. And your phrase is perfect. There's a lot of noise going on in the back of your head. And so think of it this way. You have a left brain and a right brain. And the right brain is the creative side. It's the stuff that made you think of the million mask movement. That's creative. And the left brain is the critic. It's the one who says you're not tall enough, or why did I say that? Or, hey, you don't have enough credentials. Who am I to be out there? And if those are talking at the same time, it's like having three different television stations on simultaneously. You can't weed it out. And so you just run away. The art of the deal is to separate the right from the left. And so, for example, when we're on, whether it's a podcast, a TV show, a video, when you're on, you only bring your right brain. And I teach people, you make a deal with your left brain, the critic. Hey, when I'm all done, we'll play back the tape and you can critique and talk, but you never bring the critic to the front of the room, the Zoom, or the camera.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And maybe and I wonder, like in that, and even in that thinking of like where the left brain comes in, like in the place of being able to be reflective, right? Like reflective. Like if I'm going to be like you tell people about things that were tough times, right? To reflect back on those tough times, right? As a reflection, but that's creative. Is that also considered creative?
Completely creative, because you can reflect back on the tough times and learn the lesson from them. Failure and tough times can either be your teacher or your judge. The creative side of your brain will always learn the lesson and let it be a teacher. The left side, the critic side, will always make it your judge. It'll say, well, you failed in 8th grade. You didn't make the basketball team in high school. You didn't qualify for the college you wanted to get into. And it'll remind you and pull you down. The creative side of your brain will say, hey, look, you didn't do so great at X, Y, and Z, but you know what? You made it through. And so you can make it through this. And it's, one's very positive and uplifting, and one's very negative and pulling down.
Okay.
We both have, like you said, we have all that noise in our head. And the art of the deal is to separate them.
That's it. I think that's part of this chapter. In the chapter where we're right now, like we're hitting this milestone in this podcast, but also like I've been talking about writing this book, and I was inspired by your book, right? Like we had that chat about the book at that meeting we had, that dinner we had, and I was like, this is powerful. Like I have a story I want to tell, and I'm also sometimes I get in front of the computer and I'm just like, oh, I don't know what to write, and so the critic shows up to the computer too.
Oh,
like,
same thing. Same thing. So when you're when you're at the keyboard, there's two ways to write. Some people will say you write the perfect sentence, and when you have that done, write the second sentence. You'll never write a book that way. Ernest Hemingway had this great expression. He said, "It's okay to write shit. You just don't publish it. You have to go, because writing is rewriting. And so you just go and the expression is open a vein. Just start writing. Don't worry about if it's any good. Don't worry if it makes sense. Just write. Now you have the clay to go back and reshape.
Yeah.
But if you sit there and think, well, should I have said or and, or is that capitalized? Do I do, like, you're locked up. You'll never get free, and that creativity will never flow.
That's right. And I'll go check emails because it's easier. I know I can get something done.
Exactly.
Yep. That's my MO. All right. Well, let's do it. We're already talking about the mask. Let's do it. There's 3 steps. So folks, Gerry and I are going to make our masks here, and we're going to do our mask publicly, but you can do yours anonymously at millionmask.org. And we're going to jump into it right now. So Gerry, on the left side of that piece of paper, I want you to just draw a mask. Like whatever you think a mask looks like, whatever you draw is going to be perfect. On the left side, which is this, we're going to be in this creative part right now. Draw a mask.
Got it.
Okay. All right. So now on the side where you drew the mask, you're going to write 3 words on that same side. So 3 words that are qualities or characteristics of yourself that you gladly let the world see. What are 3 qualities or characteristics that you gladly let the world see?
Got it.
Okay. And now we're going to move, that's the front of the mask. And now we're going to move to the right side, which is the back of the mask. And the back of the mask are things that you don't usually talk much about or that are harder to talk about or the things that are kind of sometimes behind the mask. The 3 things that you feel comfortable sharing today that are often more behind the mask.
Got it.
All right. Now, since you're the guest, you get to decide who goes first. Either you go first or I go first. You decide.
I'll go first.
Okay, so just do the front first, and then anything you want to say about the front, and then I'll share the front mine.
So my front mask, I put entertaining, insightful, and a guide.
Cool. Anything you want to say about any of those?
So entertaining was always my way of. I'm the last of 5 kids, and so I was the youngest at the table. So I had to be quick-witted to survive in a big family and make sure I got something to eat. I had to have a sharp wit. I had to be able to be really quick. And as I grew up, that was a really great skill in school because it helped you to stand out, and it helped you to, girls found it really attractive to have a good sense of humor. And then as I got into the professional world, that helped me to stand out. So it became a real asset to just be able to be quick-witted and entertaining because it made people stop and really see, hey, you're different.
Will you show your mask and you show what you drew? Cool. Okay. All right. I'll go first. Now we're doing the front of the mask. So this is what I drew. This is in honor of coming back from Tucson, Arizona. I drew a cactus. So on the front, I wrote serious, dedicated, and driven. And I think that I don't know why I didn't write kind or caring, because those are really things that I would really try and show. I think right now in this season of my work is very focused on moving these projects forward. And sometimes I have a hard time bringing the edge out, right? So the edge is like the kind of I don't want to be a tyrant boss, right? And so how do you have the balance between being serious, dedicated, driven, but also kind and respectful and community driven, but also we got to get stuff done, right? And so sometimes I realize that I'm either being too kind and too nice that people don't know that I'm actually serious about what I'm trying to correct in the certain behavior or whatever, or I'm being so driven that people think that I'm being disrespectful or being unkind. And so this is what I'm trying to show, and these are the ones that came out today: serious, dedicated, driven, which is that's like the
get her done,
get it done side of myself. And even the character that I drew with that interesting smile is I'm kind of smiling, but I'm also we ain't got look. Let's go. But I actually I default to smile. That's where I default. But it's interesting that these are the words that came out today.
That's powerful.
Yeah, that's the front of my mask. So now we go to the back.
Afraid, failed potential, not enough.
You want to say anything about those?
So yeah, I think they play into each other. We're all afraid of what's next. I'm a 61-year-old white male in America. What's next? I feel myself becoming translucent, where people either look at me and see things that they don't like, and other people who have looked like me and done things that nobody should be proud of. You're falsely labeled. You're afraid of that. And then the other one is can I handle whatever's next? Can I handle the last leg of my broadcasting career? Can I segue into the unknown of what happens after your professional career is done? I've always been quietly a fearful kid growing up, and there's always that kind of fear in the background. Probably wasn't until I was in college that fear was the only form of motivation I knew. I remember the professor, Doc Slevin. He was a science professor where I went to college. It was just an elective course that I took. And I took the course because I'd heard he was such a great professor. Physiology, I think, was a class. And he was the first person who ever introduced me into positive motivation. So I've always had this kind of dichotomy of fear and afraid. has always driven me. But I just, you never shed that stuff. It's still there. Failed potential. I'm always interested when if somebody introduces me at the beginning of a seminar or a podcast or a public speaking, and they start to read through your accomplishments. There's a part of me that thinks, man, that's pretty cool. That guy's done some cool stuff. But I don't think that's me. I see, the businesses that I started that didn't quite take off, or, the investment that went south, or, a relationship that didn't work out, or a mentorship that I didn't fulfill the potential of. Like, that's the part that I have for me behind the mask.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I really resonate with the part about the resume. Like, a lot of those parts, but definitely the part about the resume and fear. Like, I got invited to be on this podcast a little while called the Midlife Revolution. I was like, I almost felt insulted that he invited me to the midlife. What are you talking about? I'm young. You know what I mean? And then I really thought about it like, oh, wait, I'm 47. There's no 90-year-old people in my family. There's no males. There's no 90-year-old men in my life. Like, men in my family don't make it to 90 years old. Not in this modern time. So kind of like, oh, wow. Like, my father, he died before I was born, but he died at 30 something. So when I was in my 30s, I was kind of freaked out a lot of time. Like, I had a lot of behind the mask worrying, like, oh my goodness, I'm like outliving, this figure before me.
That's an unsettling feeling. I had a brother who passed when he was 19, and my mom died at 58. And I remember being 18 and 59 thinking, how can I have outlived them? How can I be older today than they ever were? That's a tough one to get your head wrapped around with people you love.
Man, I remember driving my just a couple of days ago. My grandmother went back to Arkansas. She was here visiting, and dropping her at the airport. And she's 80s. She's in her 80s, and like I don't think I've ever like had that thing at the airport where people are like, "Oh, bye." I never have that. I mean, I'm just like, "Thank you for coming. See you later. Hug, bye, kiss." But this one on the way driving home, I was like, I don't want to think about negative thoughts. I don't want to be in the worry side of the brain, but it picks up a lot. It picks up a lot, and I feel it. And I was like, wow, I was like feeling myself like starting to tear up, and I was like, I love her, right? I love my grandmother, but so many of those moments of like, oh wow, like why not do the things you need to do while you're here, which is part of my own journey to myself, So thank you for sharing the mask.
What was your third one on behind?
Oh no, I haven't shared it yet. I'm going to share it now.
Okay.
I was just talking.
Oh yeah.
But mine were self-critical, fear, and family loss. I think the worry about family loss, the thought of family loss. Like my dad died before I was born. I think I told what I've learned over the time is that I was growing in my mom's womb, like I was bathing in sadness. Like my mom, she was grieving, and so a lot of that got passed down to me, and I basically became very emotional. I was a very emotional little boy growing up in Oakland, California, where you're not allowed to really have feelings, And so I had to learn to tuck all that emotional side of myself away. So I just became very like kind of almost stoic. And at home, I had to be a certain character for her. But when I left out of her house, the streets of Oakland didn't tolerate you to show feelings, not to keep you safe. You could do it, but it's going to be a cost.
It's kind of like hydraulics. You can press it down one part of your life, but it's going to show up somewhere else. And it might show up 20 years later, but it's going to show up somewhere else. I mean, that's the part that like, woof. Family losses. That's my last one. Is not enough. I lost my brother. Do the math. I was 17. I'm 61, so I'm not really good at math on the fly. So it's 44 years ago. It was a long time ago, but that pain never leaves. And it's always tucked behind that. Most people don't, I don't share that with everybody I know, although I did write about it in the book because it needs to be out there. It becomes part of who you are. But there's this great scene in the movie Saving Private Ryan where the main character, who Tom Hanks saves his life, in World War II. And as Hanks is dying, he said, tells him, earn it. Earn this second chance at life. Guy gets towards the end of his life and he looks at his wife, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially says, have I been a good enough man?
I feel
That's
that.
what's behind my mask.
Thank you for sharing that. I was so excited to have this conversation with you because I think that when we got to finally meet after our calls and you coaching me just in how to present, but also just the energy that you helped to share with me about the realness. Like, how do we get on stage, like, and say things that are like real, true, and meaningful? Like, and you helped me with that. When we came up with that phrase, I am an emotional locksmith, I was like, there ain't no way that I'm going to say that to anybody. There's no way. And I know, and what was coming up? What was coming up was my self-critical voice, my fear, my self-doubt. Like, who are you to be claiming something like that? Who are you to own a title like that? Who do you think you are? Which is what I heard replaying in my community a lot growing up. Who do you think you are? You think you special? You think you better than us? And I even heard that when I came home from college, after freshman year, have a good job, got a good internship working at the Pacific Gas and Electric Company. I'm making good money that summer as a college student, and having to hear voices that are in those ways, like, who do you think you are? Now, and some of them they're coming from myself, but they were programmed from outside. They were programmed from the community that I lived in, unfortunately, that wasn't always letting you be proud of yourself. So like they could be proud of you. They could be like, yeah, but you can't be proud of yourself.
And so it's really interesting. So it was one of the things I love about the masks is that think about where you grew up. You grew up in Oakland, California, West Coast. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, East Coast. You grew up in a predominantly black community. I grew up in a predominantly white community. And yet, if you look behind our mask, you and I have two of the three attributes identical. Because we heard the same message. I heard it in this alpha male sports world. You're not enough. You're not fast enough. You're not quick enough. Who are you to think you're special? And you heard it in your community, but it was the same message from completely different worlds. And if you took the stereotype from those two worlds, they would have said, my God, these worlds they're a world apart. They're totally different. They're not. They're identical.
Yeah. Yeah. And we let our eyes do the judging. Our eyes tell us, oh, we're so different, so therefore we must be different, and therefore we can't be alike, and therefore we probably should not get along. And sadly, we probably have more in common, but if we're using our eyes to tell us, we would never think we would have anything in common.
I brought this up the other day. It's like, life gives you these things at different points in your journey so that if you're paying attention, you see way beyond yourself. For me, in my 60s, I'm 61, I've had this, epiphany of empathy. Where as a 61-year-old white male in America, I use the phrase translucent. If I'm on television, if I'm on the air, you'll see me, you'll hear me. But if I'm just walking down the street, you're not going to see me anymore because, I'm just on the cusp of being an old man. I'm an old white guy with gray hair. I'm like literally at the front door of irrelevant in the eyes of most people. Well, as a black man in America growing up, I got to believe you felt that way a lot as a young man, that people didn't see you, that you were translucent. They looked right past you. They didn't see you.
Yeah.
That's been my real, wow, aha. In my 60s is how many people have had to deal with that invisibility, that feeling of nobody sees you.
I think about that as I was thinking about being at Cal Poly. I went to San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly. It was 2% black population. Not a lot of people look like me there. And I think that there's a lot of people in that place who were like, oh, you don't deserve to be here. Like, and because it looks like you walk down the hallway, you walk down the quad, you look around, there's nobody who, like, when they look at you, they're like, hey. And when you grow up, like, whether you know somebody or not, you just acknowledge them. Like, I didn't experience that there. So I think even in college that feeling started. And every time you would see somebody who you kind of knew or you thought you knew, you were like, and then you would make eye contact with them. You were like, and I think it's that idea of like, okay. And that'll get me to the next time I see somebody, right? Because I'm not going to see somebody probably for the next 2 days, right? But at least I saw somebody today around over there by the English building, and I may not see nobody for the rest of the day, but at least I got a little bit of taste of like, okay, I was seen today. I was seen today. Yeah.
That validation of I was seen. I had this experience. I was at an Orioles game. I covered, the Orioles obviously in Baltimore, and I was leaving after like the third inning to go back to the TV station where I work. And coming in was this family of four, and they had like two young kids, and the grandmother's with them. And so the dad's like wrestling with the two kids to get up the stairs, and the grandmother's on a cane, and it's like 6 steps to go to the front door. And I just took her hand and said, "Can I help you up the steps?" And she was a big smile and said, "Thank you very much." I climbed the 6 steps, helped her up, and we stopped and looked at each. And she looked at me. She had these piercingly beautiful blue eyes, and we just held eyes for what seemed like an eternity, but it was just a second where I recognized how much she appreciated that somebody saw her. It was that simple. It so moved me.
That's a beautiful point. And I've seen that happen in places like the cafe. Like if I go to Starbucks or get coffee, like I think most time people are not even used to people thanking them. Like when I like thanking people, and I like acknowledging them. And like when they're ready to take your order, can I take, okay, what would you like? I'm like, good morning, how are you? And I'll like stop, and they're like almost like in shock that you're really waiting for an answer. Like you're not that I'm trying to like make you answer my question. I'm really asking to say good morning, how are you? And maybe they're so used to just being like, just give me my coffee, don't ask me no questions. And it's almost like that moment where you feel somebody feel, oh wow, like he really asked, right? Like, and I think we don't get it enough. I think we want it. We need it. I believe we need it more than we want it, but I think we definitely sometimes don't know how to ask for it.
And to take it full circle, if you think about the communities we grow up in, while they on the surface they look totally different geographically, socioeconomically, the message we both got was identical.
Yeah.
So why can't the message be, hey, what makes you special? Or you're special.
Yeah.
Let's develop that. Because we all are. Everybody's special. Look, we might not all be pop singers. We might not all be NBA players. We might not all be celebrities. We might not all be billionaires. But we're all special.
Yeah.
What would people's mask look like if they grew up hearing the message, you're special, let's develop that?
I think it's this idea. I heard about this recently. I haven't done the research on who came up with it, but it's called like the fallacy of uniqueness, right? Where people have been told you're unique. There's no one like you. And we also think that that's true for us and the things we go through, challenging our problems, our worries, our doubts. Like, and so it's easier just to be like, well, I'm not going to talk about it because no one knows what I'm going through, because no one's possibly going through this, because I'm the only one. There's only one me. So therefore, it must be true for yes, your DNA is uniquely you, and you are the only one who was created in that moment of creation. But you are probably going through things that people in your own community, house, even friend group are going through. But because you've thought that no one could possibly understand you, we hold it back behind this fallacy of uniqueness. Like I'm unique in my own problems too. And I think that's what we miss. Sometimes people miss to seek out talking about things they're going through.
And that's why it's so important, as you discovered, to bring your vulnerability to the front of the room, the Zoom, the camera, the stage, the microphone, the computer, whatever the medium might be, because it's not just about you discussing your pain and your traumas and your struggles. We all have those, but when you do discuss them, they resonate with other people. Other people who, on surface, you might look at and say, "Oh, they can't have any problems." What problems can he have? He's a sportscaster. He owns his own communications consulting company. He's a white guy. Like, what problems can he have? He's got a podcast. He's a good looking black man with a great smile people love. Like, it's easy for people to look at that exterior and think they don't have any problem. But as soon as we start discussing where we're really coming from, all of a sudden the exterior melts away.
That's right. That's right.
And you're not, this or that. It's like, that's, the connection, I think, lies in the courage to bring your vulnerability to the front of computers, microphones, cameras, stages is what really helps other people unlock, which is why you're so gifted as the emotional locksmith.
One of the things I was, as we get ready to wrap up, I was thinking about you were broadcasting these professional athletes who are the top 1-2% of their profession. And I don't know about your in Baltimore, what you've seen, but I know we've seen around the world, around the country, athletes who have all of this stuff provided to them by their skills. And then somehow they don't keep it. I'm trying to think of how to say it carefully. Right. They don't keep it. They've decided to do some attitudes, behaviors, actions that causes those things to be taken away, or they totally just diminish themselves. And this idea of let me put on this mask for the people who I need to impress or who I need to prove who I am. And I think we've seen it over and over again. I don't want to name a bunch of athletes right now, but I do want to, because we work with a lot of young people, and I tell our young people, listen, your talent will make room for you, but your character will if you're not clear about who you are and your values, it will close every door that you opened with your talent. And some, you can bounce back from, and some the doors they won't open again for you. And as a person who is constantly around these A-list athletes, is there something a message you have for young athletes who are on their journey, right? Because some of them are becoming who they're becoming, and if they're not careful, they could easily be becoming what they don't really want.
I think what we're doing here today, and what you're doing especially, is so powerful and so important, because if you don't address that stuff that's behind the mask, you can make $50 million and you're going to lose it all, because your life, at a kind of a universal spiritual level, thoughts become things. And your life will eventually take you in the direction of what you believe and what your thoughts are. So if you believe you are unworthy, if you believe you are poor, you can make $50 million and eventually you'll still show up poor. And you'll attract the people in your life who will take your money from you. You'll attract the people in your life who will take your houses, your cars, your possessions from you, if behind your mask is that belief that has been unchecked, unexplored, that you're not worthy, or that you are essentially poor of spirit, money, or soul.
Oh, wow.
It will play out. And so that's why the Million Mask is so powerful, because it's helping a lot of young people really pay attention to what they're feeling and thinking. And look, even what we've done today, once you get it out there, it no longer has power over you. Once you get it out there, even though it might still be it no longer controls you from that hidden man behind the curtain perspective. And so now you can move on and you can reshape your thinking. You can reshape your beliefs. By the way, beliefs are nothing more than thoughts we think over and over.
Yeah, man.
So if you think about these great young athletes, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, it doesn't matter. How did they get to be great athletes? They were DNA, born with certain skill set that none of us will have. That's fine. But there's a lot of people who are born with that caliber of DNA who don't make it. Guys who make it are very disciplined, and they train themselves, and they learn the techniques, and they practice it over and over and over. Well, you can do the same thing with your thinking. And if you can develop your character, your thinking, and your skill set simultaneously, ain't nobody taking your money away.
That's right. Gerry, I can talk to you for hours. I appreciate you for making time to be on the show. I know the season's about to get started.
We're off and running soon.
Yeah. Will you let folks know how they can, if they want to get work on their being in front of the camera, the stage, the people, how can they reach out to you? What ways the best ways for them to follow you or learn more about what you're doing?
Easiest way is go to my website, sanduskygroup.com. Or if you want to follow me on social media, easiest one is Instagram @GSandusky.
Fantastic. Well, I so appreciate you for being here today. Folks, Gerry and I, we shared our mask here publicly. We did it today publicly, but you don't have to do that. You can go on our website, millionmask.org, make your mask anonymously. And maybe after you make it anonymously, you'll begin to let go of some of that stuff that's holding you back. Gerry, I so appreciate you. Thank you for being on the show.
Love you, buddy. Great being with you, and honored to be a guest on the show. You're doing great work. I hope the million mask movement becomes the 10 million mask movement because
let's go. Let's
powerful.
Thank you, Gerry. I appreciate you.
See you, buddy.
The Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie and graphics by Kelly Wong. Guests are managed by Dan Paloma, and the podcast is edited by Samuel Matingo. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast, and for every guest that has been a part of the show, you are now a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is brought to you by the Ever Forward Club, and if you like what you've heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share this with someone. We look forward to having more conversations that matter. And please remember, there is more to you than anybody can see by just looking at you.